Welcome back to Hasbro's Hide. Embarking on a new project, primarily just because I had a bunch of extra parts laying around. And all I had to do is get a barrel and be able to pretty much build this rifle as you see it. It's the caliber I said I would never do, and yet I'm doing it. And the reason I'm doing this, and first of all, it's 300 Blackout, if you haven't guessed by now. The reason I said I'm going to do that is inherently it's just not an accurate caliber. You see a lot of people putting in a lot of effort to get this this round to shoot really well. Now, I guess that all depends on what you consider accurate. If you want to shoot 1.5, 2 MOA and you think that's great, maybe it's the caliber for you. It's great. If you want to shoot subsonics, this is the caliber for you. I want to shoot precision. And the reason I went ahead and went with this 300 Blackout is in these troubled times, I can probably make the ammunition pretty much myself. And that's going to be really critical. We'll start by shooting some jacketed bullets, some higher end and more common bullets. But the primary focus is going to be supersonic, lead cast, powder coated, and gas checked bullets. I have 5 or so different molds to throw at this thing. Some specifically designed for 300 Blackout, and other just sort of general 30 cal molds that have been used in this. So I really want to make that work. The powder coat, the gas check, maybe gas check and just traditional lubes or other types of things besides powder coat, but we're going to explore that, and that's going to be the primary focus of this series. So anyway, I thought I'd just show you the rifle real quick, and then we'll talk about the powders and things that I have and why I've chosen these to start off with. So first of all, we have a Magpul MOE stock. It has the LaRue riser on it, and so you can see here it clears back, to clear the charging handle and things like that as well. So that's on there. The upper is, I forget, UZ or something. It's not a real expensive one, from Joe Bob's. So you can check them out, Joe Bob's Outfitters, and check them out. It's not an expensive one. The lower is a Palmetto State lower, just a plain Jane stealth lower, and it's not branded with their name on the back side of it, and saying multi-cal and sort of the normal things, but no special. They have a lot of slogans and logos and kind of fun stuff they put on it. This is not just plain Jane thing. Just Mil-spec parts in it in general. I have an AIM surplus bolt in it, so that's new for me, but good recommendations from them. Mil-spec trigger. Now that Mil-spec trigger is just in there because the one trigger I have, the LaRue MBT, which I shoot in all of these because it's such an excellent trigger for the money, is on back order, so that could be a while. So anyway, we'll start with that. I might just switch the lower out for the first few rounds of testing too, because I can swap another lower. It's got an MBT in it, and we can shoot that way. But the first couple test rounds anyway, I'll see how frustrated I get using the Mil-spec trigger, because it's like 5 pounds or something. I haven't tested it. It's pretty heavy though. In fact, it's the one that came in my original DPMS rifle, so it's it's not the best. But we'll start with there. A Daytona Tactical 4 grip, 4 stock here. Pre-floating, of course, aluminum, Cerakoted, $54. I mean, this thing is really nice and really locks on well, and it's got a kind of a knurled nut that goes on there, steel nut that goes on there, then it clamps on over that. But just going over the knurling, this thing locked on really tight, and this is just really backup screws for that. The barrel is a Faxon gunner profile, 300 Blackout. And so, yep, I'm going back and trying Faxon again after having a disappointment with their Bolt in the Grendel series. I think they make good products. I mean, a lot of people rave about their products, so I have no problem with that. In fact, by the time you see this video, this is already had, at the beginning of this, 56 rounds fired through it. It just happened to be the number of cases that I had. And so, no function issues at all with the Faxon barrel. It's got a carbine length gas system. Now, that's not the most versatile. A lot of people like pistol length in here, especially for shooting subsonics, but my goal is probably not to shoot subsonics. With the insane people running our government right now, I doubt I'll ever be able to get a suppressor. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too skeptical there, but I just don't see it happening. So I'm going to focus just on supersonic stuff, so this should be just fine. let's see. Other than that, they have Athlon Athos scope. It's been a really good scope. And then we have the Burris quick release pepper mount. And this is the one I had so much trouble with on the Grendel series. So I think I figured it out. It seems to be on there pretty tight now. So hopefully it won't give us fits in 300 Blackout. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, that's the rifle. Let's get it out of the way and let's take a look at what we're going to shoot through it. All right, this is the pile that we have to shoot. Some of this is stuff I have from shooting AK-47. I load my own AK-47 rounds, and that's where the 1680 comes from. The Accurate 1680 is one of the best powders supposedly for Blackout, so we'll be testing that as well. 2400. Why in the world do we have a Magnum pistol powder here? Well, in the AK, that's an alternate powder. Now, I loaded some up, and they shot okay, but I didn't load any more, because the brass came out so hot it would burn you, and it just seemed totally wrong. Where 1680 came out, you could handle the brass; it was cool to the touch. Didn't like the temperatures that were going on with that, and the potential of eroding the throat and the chamber, things like that. There was something wrong, really wrong with those temperatures. But in these times, we're going to try it again. Now you can see I've had this powder for a little while. 6 of 08. It was $21 a pound. Can you imagine that now? So it'll be fine. There's about a half a pound there, so we'll shoot that up and see how it does. One of the other good powders for the 300 Blackout is 5744 from Accurate, from what I've been reading. And so I was able to find this locally. Same place I was able to find the Lightning bullets in the 22 bulk series that we're working on. So that's encouraging. They could get that locally. It wasn't cheap, though. That's an expensive powder. Even in normal times, that's an expensive powder. Shooter's World Blackout rifle. Now, this is a pretty good powder. I loaded this for a friend and ran through their rifle, and then the first 56 that I mentioned that I had already shot through that rifle to sort of test it out were loaded with this, and it functioned perfect. Okay, did have a little trouble with the loads I chose of locking the bolt back, but they were not max loads by any means. They were middle to low end loads, so that's fine. I think that is not maybe so much the powder as just the charge that I was shooting. Oh, one thing I didn't mention related to that is on our rifle, we have an adjustable gas block, and so it's an Odin Works adjustable gas block, and so we'll be able to tune that a little bit if we need to. I just tuned it for function and for brass, clocking, make sure it's trying to hit roughly 3 to 4 o'clock, but that rifle has a deflecto brake on it, so it's a little harder to tell exactly where your brass is coming off once it hits that, as far as the clock angle coming behind you. So anyway, then we have H110. Now, I had this powder for loading some other calibers, and fortunately I have a complete sealed up new can of it. And so that's another good powder for the Grendel, or for the 300 Blackout. The other powder then I have is a couple other powders here, is H4198. Now this can work. A lot of people like this in supersonics. It's a little, I think, sketchy maybe for subsonics, but we'll see if we shoot those. And then Accurate 2015. I've had this powder for quite a while and loaded a bunch of 55 grain 223 cases with it. But, it was never accurate, and I can't blame the powder. It ends up being it's the bullets. It's those bulk Lake City bullets that I mentioned in the previous 223 videos, if you want to go back and see that. So, yeah, we'll see how it does. It's one of the powders some people have tried and used, and so we'll see how it goes. Now, bullets. Let's talk bullets. Now, these are the ones, I have a couple more, but I don't think I'll run them through it. This is the primary one that we're going to run for jacketed through it. Now, these are Hornady bulk bullets. They're 155 grain, which is kind of odd, from Mid-South. So Mid-South sells those. I don't know this, but I suspect they're seconds. There's no scarring or anything like that, but it just seems that is often the case when we get these bulk packages. So to test that then, we have the actual 150 grain bullet. We're going to compare those side by side and see if in fact they really are the same bullet, and these are just maybe a little heavier, and they've been sorted out and sold in bulk. So we'll check that. We'll take some dimensions, we'll look at them closely with the scope and take a look at that as well. This is one of my favorite bullets. Okay, and they don't make them anymore. The AMAX from Hornady, 168 grain. This just shoots lights out of my Mil-spec 308 Remington rifle, Remington 700 rifle. It just shoots great. It and Reloader 15 and Varget, it's a lot of fun. Sub 0.4 MOA every day. And so this is a really good combination. But I'm down to my last 2 boxes of this. So this is a partial. We had 96 in here, so we're going to shoot some out of there and test it. Primarily, I'm going to save these to actually test in a Springfield, 1903 Springfield as well when we're finished with it. Okay, so we have then these Sierra Match Kings 175 grain bullets. So we have these to shoot. These should be good, a good test of that, of a 300 Blackout. Heavier bullets, of course, all these heavier bullets, because that's what I've been shooting in 308. That's what I have. The 150 grain is the lightest I have right now. But coming is Hornady 125 grain flat base bullets. And so that'll give us the max speed, sort of, for this caliber, max velocity, and we'll check that out as well. Well, we have Nosler Custom Competition, 175 grains. I've had really good luck in my 308 with that as well. 42.5 grains of Varget is a beautiful load with that and that rifle. So we'll shoot a few of those as well. And then these, yeah, I just put those on the table more or less as a to get your attention. I doubt I'll ever shoot that in this gun. I don't know. These are really precision rounds, and we're not going to waste them on a 300 Blackout, I don't think. They're really going to be for the 308, and we'll shoot these later this year in the 308 series. So anyway, a lot going on here. Now let's talk about our brass. All right, now I thought I'd show you what I've done to get brass. Brass, as you probably know, is nowhere to be found. Even getting on back order, etc. And it's crazy expensive. And so I did what I said I would never do with this cartridge, not start this cartridge, because I didn't want to have to convert my own brass. Well, I ended up doing that. So I did a little research, checked it out, and found a list. Fortunately, a lot of people have gone before me on this, and found a list of cartridge head stamps that work. I mentioned I had loaded some of those rounds previously for a friend and had lots of trouble. About 1 in 10 would jam and wouldn't go fully home to battery. And this was brass I bought in bulk that was already been processed, the brass I used for her. And yeah, well, what I ended up finding, I tried all kinds of things. I sized even farther, as far as I could get down the base. I was really stressing my press and dies to do that, and just trying to size it all the way down, bump the shoulder down, size the base down. I used a small base 223 die to get this base even smaller, thinking that was it. And well, no, that's really not it. What I found, and if you've done this as well, you might have found this too, there are certain cases, head stamps, that either the brass is harder or it has higher elasticity. So what I believe is happening is it would go down through the die just the same as the rest of these, but then as it came out, it'd spring back. And it would spring back particularly down near the base of the case here. And then it would not go to battery. You could check it in the headspace gauge I have, and this would be just barely out. The head would be just barely sticking out. So you're thinking, well, it'd be a few of those, and that would just drive on home. Well, no, it's not that easy. So unfortunately, then after going through that learning process and loading for her, well, then I did my own, and I found that list, and these are all WCC, or Winchester Cartridge Company, military 556 brass. Now I could have chosen from many head stamps. I have quite a bit of 223 brass, but I didn't want to ruin my newer like City brass and just take a chance of ruining them anyway. So this is one I'm on the list, and this just worked beautifully. One thing about this brass, though, it's definitely a harder brass. You can really notice it when you go to resize, because I also had a few, like just a Winchester case and a couple others that I got mixed in from part of this testing, and they were much softer brass and they sized really easy. You can definitely feel the resistance when you size this, but it did very well. So this is what the end of the process looks like. So here's what we began with. Just you know, standard 223 brass. And if you haven't seen this, there are many other videos out there and sites that can tell you how to do this. But what I have is I have a bandsaw, and it's a wood or metal cutting bandsaw, and I got a metal blade on it. So I cut the neck and the shoulder off right at the shoulder. Now, it ends up being, after learning this a bit, I could have cut farther down just so and save myself from trimming, but I wanted to be sure to have enough metal. So that's what I did, just right below the neck right there. So right, excuse me, the shoulder right there is where I cut it. And so after doing that, what I found was, even with a metal cutting blade, I had big long burrs that come off of it. And when you try to then deburr and chamfer using this Hornady Duo that I use in prepping my brass, it would grab it and rip these things out of your hand. And so you get really tired, just kind of squeeze these things so hard to get that done. So after a few hours of frustration, I finally sort of sat back and thought a little bit and got a little bit smarter. And I have a Delta 1-inch belt sander that I use for other stuff, so a small tabletop kind of Delta sander, and just took those cases and put them in the sander, sanded them flush again. So I sanded this face here and then just spun them around and cleaned the outside. So now when I brought them back to here, all I had to do was really just chamfer the inside and lightly touch the outside, and that decreased the work an awful lot. So from that point then, this is a lot of work to convert the brass. Then you have to trim them to length because you've sized them, but this neck section is way too long. Because as you push that case in, it extrudes the brass forward. So then I used this L.E. Wilson case trimmer. Now this is the 223 case holder, and you put that in there, and if you notice, I don't know if you can see there well or not, there's a lip that's been machined into this face. This case holder doesn't come that way. Okay, so what was happening was occasionally, depending on how deep this sat into the case holder, it would cut into the faces. Now this is a fairly soft steel, so it wasn't a big deal because this cutter is the titanium oxide, titanium nitride, sorry, coating on there, and so it cut through into that no problem. And so now actually it gives just a little bit of relief groove for cutting this brass, and so that's fine, and that works out well. So case after case, drop it in there, drive this forward, trim it, and knock them back out, and then away you go. So that's it. Then one more time you have to deburr and chamfer again. So that's the process. You know, you have to cut the cases, sand the face of the cases to get the burrs off, deburr and chamfer, size them, then go back and trim them to length, deburr and chamfer again, and then finally anneal them. And that's what I'll show in this next section here. You can see what the annealing process looks like on our Annealese machine. And that's the final step, and you can see then these cases have been done. So that's what I've been doing the last few weeks, just working on the process here, getting this done, making sure this brass is perfect. Every one of them ran through the headspace gauge too. So every one of them is exactly what it should be. And that's the beauty also of this L.E. Wilson. It is so precise on keeping the, its nature is just to really keep the cutter perfectly square with this. And then the way it hits the stop nut, the dimension is the same every time. It doesn't vary a half a thousandths at all, and that's the accuracy of my calipers. It's just always the same number. So beautiful system. I use it for everything, including my precision rounds and for converting this brass. So that's the process. Let's look at the annealing, and then let's start loading some ammunition. All right, now we're set up to anneal our converted brass. Now, this is a little out of order from what I normally do, and that's just because of the way I've gone through on converting this brass. So normally, you know, like I'd have once fire brass, I would clean it, anneal it, resize it, trim and chamfer, and then reload it again. Well, in this case, what I've done is, since we've already cut it off, we've cut the neck and shoulder off of the old case, the 5.56 case, and then deburred it, and then sized it, and then trimmed it and chamfered it, and then now and cleaned it again to get the lube off, and now we're just left with this ready to anneal. And so I just like to get it annealed, consistent neck tension, and relieve whatever stress we may have imparted in this section of the annealing. Now, if you notice, the only thing we really have resized on this case, the body, of course, gets resized a little bit, but it's really this step and the shoulder here, and necking of the case from this diameter down to that for our bullet. So that's what we're really trying to anneal, is just this section, maybe just right to that shoulder. I really don't want to go down any farther in this case on the 300 Blackout. So this should be, with the mag torch, should be a little bit different than the previous torch that I had run on it when it came with the Annealing Z as far as the speed goes. So we'll probably, I've already done a test on this, we'll probably run at about 43% or so, and we'll get that going here in just a second. So let's light our torch and get moving. Alright, turn this thing way down. Alright, speed this up a little bit. There we go. So I'm hitting it, in this case, right in the middle of the neck, just actually to the outside of the lip of the case, just a little bit, just slightly. And the reason I'm doing that, normally I put that right at the junction of the neck and the shoulder, but we're conducting too much heat from this short case into these wheels, and these are the small wheels, the smallest one that they make for this machine. So it's still conducting too much heat, and these wheels are getting hot. So if you run very midi, and we'll probably see this as I run, this is about 180 cases. As I run down in, I think, well, I've already run a few, it's about 150 cases here. But as we run down into this, we may see some sticking. And when you do, then the machine will get out of time and it can jam. So you got to kind of watch this when you're doing Blackout brass. But overall, it's doing pretty good. I think in the end, though, I'm going to either machine aluminum wheels, or I'm going to make an aluminum, take aluminum stamping, aluminum sheet, and spin form a shield that goes on the front, sort of cupped towards us, so it'll not touch the plastic except for on the metal shaft, and deflect the heat away. So that's probably the best way to do this, because I'm afraid the aluminum wheels themselves will just heat up too. They'll conduct heat faster, but they'll heat up the whole body, the thermal mass, faster as well. So, you know, it's a hit or miss thing to try. And so I'll probably, you know, like I say, I'll try the stamped aluminum piece, and you can imagine, let me show you, imagine like this shape, except a more domed out, sitting over that screw and relieved for the slot here, and then just turning with it and shielding a bit more of that plastic wheel. So try that. Probably machine an aluminum set of wheels on there too, and see what happens there. It's just this is just sort of a sketchy thing to do when you have this short of brass. It's just conducting a lot of heat straight to that wheel. Other cases haven't really seemed to be a problem, but 300 Blackout is for sure a challenge. So anyway, we'll finish this up, and then we'll get on to reloading some rounds. Alright, here's what I think we'll do for our first firing with the rifle on the channel, is we will take these bulk Hornady 155 grain bullets. We'll use those. It's just, you know, we'll just experiment with them. They're not going to be the most accurate, I think, but for breaking in the gun and all, they're going to be just fine. And then we'll work on our powder coated, gas checked bullets, all that sort of stuff in subsequent videos. So what I've done though is, since I filmed the last segment of that, I was able to find 500 commercial 300 Blackout once fired cases. And so this is awesome. So what I did was I sorted out Remington Peters 300 Blackout brass, and that's these first 20 rounds. Our middle 20 here are going to be just sighters, and then over here then is our WCC converted brass. Now, I've gone ahead and primed them. They're with Federal small rifle primer, just primers I have. Don't care too much about them. They're good primers and all, but saving the CCI 41s for later on down the road, and some of the Magnum ones for on down the road. We're going to use H110 today, and so this is supposed to be a really good blackout powder. So we're going to test it and find out how well it does with, I think a less than stellar bullet. But we'll find out from previous testing. It's like, I'm not so convinced that's a great bullet, but we have, still over 200 of them to work with. So what we're going to do is these are going to be all H110, and we're going to start with 15.1 grains, go up to 15.4, 15.7, and 16.0. We're going to do 4 different charges. Now, 16.0 is a 10th over Hornady's max, so we're going to be careful here and check that out, but I think we should be just fine there. And so what we'll end up doing is we'll see H110, 4 different powder loads, 2 different types of brass. Commercial Remington Peters, converted WCC military brass. And of course now, these have already been, I bought these and they were already cleaned, sized, everything. It was a really good deal. So I did not go ahead and re-anneal them or anneal them in the first place. We'll do that after we fire them. But all of our WCCs have been, you saw the process, including the final step of annealing. So let's get these things loaded up, and then we're going to hit the range. All right, 15.1 in our converted WCC brass. All right, let's take a look at our brass. This is our Remington Peters factory brass, 300 Blackout brass, from of H110 powder, and from 15.1 grains up to 16 grains. And there was really nothing to see here. There's no issues, no extractor or ejector marks, anything like that. And the primers are all good. They're rounded, not overly flattened, and no cratering. And so that's really good. These are our cider shots, so they again showed they're just mixed brass and they showed no issues at all. And then over here is our formed WCC brass that we made into 300 Blackout, and it is identical here. All the primers look great, edges are rounded, not flat at all, and no cratering going on. All the way up to our maximum 16 grain charge here. So everything looks really good in the brass. In fact, the velocities here between these two brasses are really really close. Between these two cases, I should say, are really close. And so the internal volume has to be pretty close. Although I believe when you look at these targets, though, you can judge for yourself, but I believe the brass we converted shot better. And you can see it in some of the results. So let's take a look at those targets. All right, taking a look at our targets. This is our Remington Peters brass, our first shots. And I didn't get any chronograph data because, well, it happened to me twice. I did it over here too. Like an idiot, I forgot to arm my lab radar. But we got data on either side of this. So at 15.1, we have no data here, but at 15.1 in our WCC brass, we see it's 1,700 feet per second, 16.7 standard deviation. That's pretty similar. You see here then on the 15.4 charge in, we have 1741, and it's going to be very similar to that as well, because these match up pretty close. 1796 at 15.7 and 1807. But the interesting thing is, on both of these cases, as we moved away from these two charges, our standard deviation started climbing, extreme spread started getting really bad. Well, I put these C's on here for you guys to see. This is where they were heavily compressed. They were all compressed. Well, 15.1 was probably not quite compressed. 15.4 was certainly very full, but at 15.7 it was compressed, and then of course at 16 it was highly compressed. And I think we just see that that's breaking down the powder and making some erratic results. Now, the group results are pretty good, but the standard deviation extreme spreads were not so good. So maybe, you know, somewhere between 15.4 and 15.7, we might be able to find a happy medium there. I don't know. But that group was only here in our WCC brass. It was not so good there in our Remington Peters brass. So let's talk about the group sizes. So on the left, I'll show all these stats afterwards if you want to see the extra details, but that top left is a 0.728 inch group, or about 1.39 MOA. So, you know, right out of the gate with a bulk bullet, it's not so bad. Not so bad. Now this next one here is a really good group, except I had one fall low, and this could very well be that Mil-spec trigger. I can't say 100% sure, but I was certainly learning that trigger because I had so much creep, and you know, when you're used to something like the LaRue MBTs, and you know, it's really hard to go back to Mil-spec, and these are the first shots with the Mil-spec trigger, so it could be that, I don't know, but I took the numbers either way. So with them all together, it's a 2 inch group, but with that one taken back out, then we're at a 0.4 inch group, or 0.77 MOA, which is probably a pretty, I hate not counting things, so I still counted them, but I show both stats here for you at the end. But there are 4 bullet holes right there. That thing is certainly shooting well, so that's a great place that we'll explore some more. Now if we move over to 15.7, now the group's opened up. Could this be the trigger? I don't know, maybe, but these certainly probably are not. And so that's a pretty good size group. That's a 1.3 inch group, or about 2.5 MOA, because all this is at 50 yards to start with here. And our last group with our Remington Peters brass here is a 0.684 inch group. So that's, you know, it's not terrible. It's not bad. 1.3 MOA. So again, but this is where it's highly compressed. Maybe not so great, but I don't know. It's like this one over here. It's shot fairly well that way. So I don't know. It might be worth exploring that just a little bit more. So on the Winchester Cartridge Company, WCC brass, converted brass, then we see these numbers. So this is a 0.97 inch group, or about 1.8 MOA. We move over here, and that's a 1.46 inch group. But if you drop this one out, which I did over there to compare them, then this is a 0.458 inch group. So now these compare really well when you drop them out. So that could be a very sweet spot for us to shoot in. And so we're definitely going to explore 15.4 grains of H110 again. Okay. Now we drop down here. This group is really decent. It's 0.447 for all 5 bullets and a 0.85 MOA. So already I think I've exceeded what my expectations were in 300 Blackout, at least initially, because we're getting sub-MOA groups here. This one was the first, I guess, total sub-MOA group, not dropping shots out. So that's, you know, not bad. Not bad. But, you know, there's one thing to shoot sub-MOA groups at 50 yards. But you extend it to 100 yards, yeah, it's not quite linear. Okay, so things can change. So we're just starting our initial stuff here at 50, but then we'll stretch it on out and take a look at 100 and maybe farther after that. So anyway, really good group. You know, to begin with, 0.44 inches. That's pretty good. And then down here, it's the same kind of thing. I got one that really fell out, and that made it a 1.6 inch group. But if I pull that out, then it's a 0.577 inch group. So you can tell the barrel's going to do good. The gun's shooting good. We have a couple of these falling out. And I don't know if it's a trigger or not. I won't know until I either switch the lower out or get my back-ordered LaRue MBT trigger in. So pretty good results though. I'm pretty happy for a bulk bullet. First test, not bad. Not bad. Brand new barrel, not nearly broken in. And so pretty good. And I did, if you noticed in the video, I did have to play with the gas block a little bit. It's got a Odinworks adjustable gas block on there, and it was having problems locking the bolt back, and initially having problems feeding the next round. So I had failure to feeds in there, and so I opened up the gas block 3 clicks, and then everything started cycling just really, really well. So these are lower power powder charges, things like that. I wasn't too surprised by that, but when I adjusted it, then I ran right through this target without any issues at all. So anyway, hope you like it. Good results. I know it's a long video. It's the first one on 300 Blackout, showing a lot of detail. But we're going to have a lot more fun. We have more jacketed bullets, and then we're really going to start tearing into cast, and then cast and lubed, and then cast and powder coated, and cast and lubed and gas checked, and cast and powder coated and gas checked. We got a lot of combinations, 5 different molds, and we should have a lot of fun. So thanks for watching. If you like it, please subscribe.